I bought myself the most badass urn. I picture myself as Ash, lying inside, and the thought thrilled me. Without another moment's hesitation, I downed the entire bottle of sleeping pills. Just as I was blissfully preparing to say goodbye to this world, my phone rang. A strange number. Ethan Thompson, is that you? I need the urn you just purchased. It's an emergency. Name your price. I glanced at the empty pill bottle and had a laugh. What a coincidence. You kicking the bucket today, too? How about this? First one to flatline gets it. Though, I think I'll probably be quicker. If we happen to die at the same time, we could always mix our ashes. The person on the other end was silent for a long moment before replying. Fine. Today was the perfect day to die. But before I checked out, I decided to treat myself. I never lived like a king, so I might as well go out in style. Right? I walked into a high-end funeral home and picked out the most ridiculously brilliant diamond-dusted urn I could find, the polar opposite of my drab gray life. The saleswoman tapped her finger on the sample. Will you be paying in full, or would you like to finance it? Oh, the disrespect. Who the hell finances their own urn? In full. I slammed my credit card on the counter. Let's draw up the papers now. The look she gave me said I was insane. The second the card was charged, my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Leo. I rolled my eyes and answered. Before he could speak, I cut him off. No, I won't lend you money. I'm not chipping in for another wedding gift. I'm not buying a house. I don't need insurance. And I will not be liking, sharing, or commenting on anything on your social media. He bit back through gritted teeth. Ethan, you can go to hell. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone and raised an eyebrow. Thanks for the suggestion. Way ahead of you. Stepping out of the funeral home, I took a deep breath and pulled a bottle of sleeping pills from my bag. The doctor said the brain tumor pressing on my nerves would eventually become excruciating, better than a slow, painful death. My phone rang again. An unknown number this time. Why do people keep interrupting my grand exit? Hello. I answered, my patient's gone. The voice on the other end was surprisingly assertive. Ethan Thompson? I need the urn you just bought. It's an emergency. Name your price. Seriously? I laughed, half in anger, half in disbelief, while I started chewing the pills. What a coincidence. You kicking the bucket today, too? There was a brief silence on the other end, and when the voice returned, it was a little more polite. Mr. Thompson, my name is Charlotte Pierce. That urn is very important to me. Charlotte Pierce? As in, the CEO of Pierce Holdings, plastered all over the financial news? I nearly choked on a pill. Don't tell me the great Charlotte Pierce has a terminal illness, too. I looked at the now empty bottle. Look, this isn't about money. I decided to poke the bear. How about this? First one to flatline gets it. Her tone suddenly turned smug. Oh, it'll definitely be me. I'm already slitting my wrist. I wasn't about to lose. No way. I'll be faster. I just took the pills. You'll have to try harder if you want to beat me. Where are you? Her voice suddenly tightened. I thought I heard the clatter of a knife hitting the floor. I'm sending someone over right now. She was really in a hurry. Huh? A bizarre, competitive urge I didn't know I'd surged through me. Don't waste your time. I've had bad luck my whole life. I'm guaranteed to die faster than you. Before I could finish, a sharp pain exploded in my temple. With my last ounce of strength, I had to dial my mom's number to say a final goodbye. The moment the call connected, everything went black. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was a beautiful face, full red lips, bright, intelligent eyes. You're awake? I'm Charlotte. I blinked. I'm not dead. They pumped your stomach. She handed me a glass of water. The doctor said you swallowed over 300 sleeping pills. You almost died from bloating. My phone vibrated. I glanced over and saw a voice message from Leo in the family group chat. I put it on speaker, and his furious voice filled the hospital room. Ethan, what the hell is wrong with you? Chloe's wedding is tomorrow, and you pull this stunt now. Charlotte's eyebrow arched delicately. I replied to the group chat without a change in my expression. Ethan, yes. A second later, a notification popped up. Dad has left the chat. It was followed by, Mom has left the chat. David has left the chat. Mark has left the chat. I stared silently at the group name, now with a lonely 2 next to it. Impressive, Charlotte said, suddenly clapping. More dramatic than our board meetings. I finally took a good look at the legendary finance titan. She had large eyes and a high nose, more stunning than any movie star, though her face was unnaturally pale. She pulled a file from her briefcase. About the urn. Not for sale, I said flatly. That's the last piece of dignity I'm affording myself. $100 million, she said coolly. Deal. The voice wasn't mine. The hospital room door flew open, and my mother rushed in, trailing a cloud of perfume. Her eyes landed on Charlotte, and her face changed instantly. Ms. Pierce, what are you doing here? Charlotte rose gracefully. I'm here to see my fiancé. My mother and I both stared wide-eyed. My mother stammered, pointing at me. My fiancé. Him. I pointed a trembling finger at myself. Me? Charlotte's expression didn't waver. Yes, we both fell in love with the same urn. We were planning to mix our ashes and be buried together in a couple of days. I almost choked on my own spit. The day after they pumped my stomach, I was lying in bed, studying my brain CT scan, when I looked up and saw Charlotte standing at the door, holding a fruit basket. She had traded her power suit for a floral dress and looked much more approachable, if you ignored the 3 bodyguards in suits standing behind her. Ms. Pierce. I pointed at the fruit basket. Are you here to offer condolences or sacrifices? Charlotte placed the basket on the bedside table. I heard you like strawberries. I froze. I'm allergic to strawberries. The door was suddenly thrown open. My brother Leo burst in, reeking of alcohol, followed by my parents and, in a wedding dress, my sister, Chloe. Ethan. Leo ripped the 4 from my hand. You son of a... His shout was cut short as one of Charlotte's bodyguards pinned him against the wall. The room fell terrifyingly silent. I looked down at the bead of blood welling up on the back of my hand and found it hilarious. This was my family. Even when I was dying, they had to yell first. My mother was the first to react, pointing a trembling hand at the CT scan. Is this real? My father snatched my medical file, his hands shaking as he flipped through it. Impossible. Just last week Leo broke free from the bodyguard, grabbed my CT scan, and threw it against the wall, his voice trembling. How could this be? Chloe, are you even capable of telling the truth anymore? Leo, my father barked, then turned to me, his voice suddenly, terrifyingly gentle. Ethan, son, I know a top neurosurgeon. We'll transfer you. We'll leave right now. I shrank back. That won't be necessary. I've already arranged for the best medical expert from Pierce Medical to consult on his case. Every head in the room swiveled toward Charlotte. She stood calmly by my bed, the picture of a devoted fiancé. After all, Ethan is my responsibility now. Leo stared, then sneered. And who the hell are you? Charlotte leisurely pulled a photograph from a small side pocket in her purse and held it up to Leo. Recognize this? In the photo, a tiny version of me and a tiny version of Charlotte stood in an amusement park. I was holding cotton candy, and she had a disgusted look on her face as she wiped a smudge of sugar off my cheek. The entire family was stunned, including me. My family was escorted out of the room. The last to leave was Chloe. She looked back at me, her lips trembling as she said something I couldn't hear. After the door closed, I collapsed back onto the bed. What? When was this? I stammered. Last night. The tech department pulled an all-nighter photoshopping it, Charlotte said with a shrug. My eyes widened. You? Why? Charlotte started peeling an apple from the fruit basket. I just didn't like the way they were treating you. I took the apple she offered and bit into it. So, what's your illness? Her hand paused. Who said I was sick? Then why were you buying an urn? For my collection. I almost choked on the apple. A collector, huh? That's a unique hobby, Ms. Pierce. Charlotte sighed, her hand resting over her chest for a moment. Her voice was flat. I had heart surgery last year. I stared into her eyes. So, I'm already halfway to dead, she said nonchalantly. Sharing an urn with you isn't a bad deal. For some reason, my nose started to sting. I quickly looked down and took another bite of the apple to hide it. By the way, Charlotte pulled a black credit card from her suit pocket and placed it on the nightstand. For your medical bills. I stared at the card and suddenly smiled. Ms. Pierce, is this your way of saying you're my sugar mama? It's an investment, she said calmly. I see potential in your design talents. What design talents? For urns. She pointed to the file. My one condition is that you leave a space for a QR code. When you scan it, a picture of the two of us will pop up. I snorted. And then what? A little message that says, congratulations. You found a pair of star-crossed lovers. To my surprise, Charlotte actually nodded. That's a possibility. We both started to laugh. Charlotte's heart condition was serious. How serious? Let's just say my death was on a timer, but hers could happen at any second. Gin, and I'm knocking with 0. I slammed my cards down. A collective groan went up from the nurses gathered in the room. Mr. Thompson, this is the ICU, not a casino, the head nurse fumed. Charlotte calmly produced a black card. For any damages. One of her bodyguards was trying so hard not to laugh his shoulders were shaking. He accidentally knocked over an 4-stand, which in turn ripped off Charlotte's EKG leads. The heart monitor flatlined with a long, piercing beep. Ms. Pierce. Her bodyguards panicked. I didn't even look up from shuffling the deck. Relax. She pulled that same trick on the doctors during rounds yesterday. Charlotte calmly reattached the leads, and the monitor immediately sprang back to life with a steady rhythm. She winked at me. You learn fast. The sight of the head nurse fleeing the room made me laugh so hard my foreline trembled. Another round? She asked. I glanced at the clock on the wall. One more, then I have to go to radiation. You coming back after? Of course. We can play with the 4 still in. We'll just hang the bag on the leg of the card table. Charlotte laughed, and it was a surprisingly beautiful sight. Then, mid-laugh, her face went pale, and she clutched her chest, slumping over. Charlotte, on the 3rd day of Charlotte's cardiac episode, I invented a new form of therapy, creating EKG patterns with playing cards. See? This is a normal sinus rhythm. Charlotte's lead physician, Dr. Matthews, stood at the door, his clipboard clattering to the floor. Mr. Thompson, do you know how to get to our hospital's psychiatric ward? Sure do, I said, not looking up from my cards. I was just in their activity room last week to borrow a deck of cards. Charlotte and I were playing Guess Who Croaks First. Dr. Matthews looked like he'd seen a ghost. Charlotte gave a weak smile. Dr. Matthews, he's just expressing his concern in a unique way. Unique. Dr. Matthews pointed to the abstract art I'd made on the wall with her CT scans. He turned your MRI into Van Gogh's Starry Night. I puffed out my chest with pride. Van Gogh will be proud of me. Dr. Matthews looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Charlotte stared at the ceiling and said softly, when I was a kid, my hospital room was never this lively. I stopped arranging the cards. Why not? For a Pierce, getting sick is a weakness, she said lightly. The board of directors would have questioned my ability to be the successor. I pictured a little Charlotte lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by a pack of old men in suits pointing fingers, and a sudden rage boiled up in me. That's it. I'm going to go paint your corporate headquarters to look like Optimus Prime. Charlotte laughed so hard she started coughing. They disowned me. Perfect. I handed her an oxygen mask. You could be my sister. I'll take you out for all the best food and drinks. On what? Your maxed out credit card that you used to buy and earn? She teased. Hey, I threw a pillow at her. Who are you looking down on? I'm still. The door was pushed open. Chloe stood there, holding a fruit basket, her eyes as red as a rabbit's. Ethan, can I come in? My face fell. Wrong room. Your brother's not here. Tears streamed down Chloe's face. I came to apologize. She suddenly rushed to my bedside and dropped to her knees. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I read your journal. I know what you went through all those years. My blood ran cold. The journal from when I was 15. It held every single unbearable memory from the 7 years I was missing after being abducted. The reason I was taken in the first place? To protect my sister. For all these years, I thought I was the only one who remembered. Chloe pulled a stack of papers from her bag, her hands shaking. I found everyone you mentioned in the journal. The caregiver from the orphanage has been arrested, and that other man. I snatched the papers from her. On top was a police report receipt. The date showed that Chloe had filed the report the same day I was diagnosed. Why? My throat was dry. I thought you hated me. Her makeup was ruined from crying. How could I ever hate you? I was just trying to get your attention, but you were always so... Charlotte sat up straight. Ethan, you look pale. Of course I did. The memories I had deliberately buried were crashing down on me. The caregiver's belt, fighting a dog for scraps of food, the dark closet. All those bloody wounds had never healed. They had just become hidden reefs, lurking beneath the surface, erupting with a dull ache in every moment I felt unloved. Out. I pointed at the door. All of you get out. Chloe tried to say something else, but one of Charlotte's bodyguards escorted her out. After the room was quiet, I realized my hand was clenched around the papers. "Want to talk about it?" Charlotte asked softly. "Talk about what?" "The 7 years of abuse? How I was locked in a cage like an animal for people to look at. How I was sold 3 different times." I laughed, a sound uglier than a sob. "Or should we talk about how when I came home, I found out this family didn't want me anymore?" Charlotte listened quietly, then said, "I was kidnapped when I was 10. My head snapped up. "The kidnappers were hired by my uncle," she said, her voice as calm as if she were telling someone else's story. "They locked me in a basement, gave me only a cup of water a day, all to get my father to sign over his shares." My throat tightened. What happened? I escaped and went straight to the shareholders' meeting. A corner of her mouth twitched, showed up in the conference room covered in blood, and exposed my uncle's plot right there. "So, your heart. It started then." She brushed it off. "My point is, you can't compare pain. Your suffering doesn't become less important just because mine might seem worse. And some scars look like flaws on the surface. But how do you know that from another angle? They aren't a work of art." My nose stung again. I quickly looked down, pretending to sort the papers. "Wow, Charlotte, your pep talks are a little on the nose, don't you think?" Charlotte smiled and picked up a folder from the nightstand. "Speaking of which, I have a proposal." Inside was a SickMate Alliance special action plan, detailing how we could use our remaining time, establish the Problem Child Foundation to deal with irresponsible parents, teach every kid in the hospital how to braid bracelets out of 4 tubing, perform a death metal set at the Pierce Holdings annual gala, mail a box of screaming chickens to everyone who ever wronged us, orchestrate a live-streamed family meltdown. I flipped through the plan. "When did you make this?" "Last night while you were snoring." She handed me a pen. "You in?" The action plan Charlotte handed me was like a sudden, brilliant light. I realized that living didn't have to be about waiting for death. It could be about turning years of accumulated pain into a spectacular fireworks display before the final stop. I signed my name with a flourish. "Pleasure doing business with you, SickMate." Charlotte picked up the nurse call button. "Nurse, we need 2 glasses of champagne. Alcohol is prohibited in the hospital." The head nurse's voice blared from the speaker. "Then make it 2 bottles of saline," I added. "Vintage 82. On the 3rd day of our plan, Chloe came again. This time she brought my childhood art supplies and a faded photograph. A 6-year-old me playing with a water gun in a garden with an unfamiliar little girl. "This is Charlotte," Chloe whispered. "Mom said that before you were taken, you used to play at the Pierce's house next door all the time." I stared at the yellowed photo. The little girl with the stern face was. "So you knew me all along?" I spun towards Charlotte, who was napping. That amusement park photo wasn't photoshopped. My head was buzzing. So Charlotte knew it was me when she called from the funeral home? So she saved me because... "It's because you dropped a caterpillar on my head," Charlotte said, her eyes now open. "Me? On my 6th birthday," she said, a smile in her eyes. "You called it a birthday surprise." Chloe quietly slipped out of the room. I stared at the photo for a long time. "Why didn't you say anything sooner? What was there to say?" Charlotte shrugged. "Besides, you'd forgotten. So why admit it now?" "Because..." She paused. "I didn't want you to die thinking that no one had ever genuinely cared about you." The room was suddenly, achingly quiet. An autumn leaf drifted down and landed on the windowsill with a soft tap. "Charlotte," I said softly, Let's try to live. Okay." She was silent for so long, I thought she'd fallen asleep again. "Okay, let's try." Her voice was impossibly hoarse. "At least until we've mailed out all the screaming chickens." After Charlotte collapsed from another heart attack, I decided to execute the 3rd item on our list, performing a death metal set at the Pierce Holdings annual gala. "Are you sure this is therapeutic?" Dr. Matthews watched me fashion a guitar strap out of EKG leads. "I thought music therapy usually involved, calming piano music." "Heavy metal improves circulation," I said with a straight face. "Science has proven that at decibels over 120, the rate of cardiac arrest drops by 70%. Dr. Matthews was speechless. "What science is that?" "The Journal of the SickMate Alliance, 3rd issue. I converted in 4-pole into a microphone stand. Charlotte is the corresponding author." From her bed, Charlotte gave a weak thumbs up. The performance was set for the next evening. While sneaking out of the hospital to buy gear, I ran into Chloe in the elevator. Ethan. She was clutching a cardboard box, her eyes swollen. Can I help? The box contained my old art supplies and a CD labeled Ethan Thompson's original compositions. When did you? You recorded it the year you were taken, Chloe said, biting her lip. Mom kept it locked in the safe. She only found it yesterday. A strange numbness spread through me. On the disc, a 6-year-old boy was singing in a squeaky voice, "I'm gonna be a rock star and blow up all the bad guys." In the background, a little girl was awkwardly singing harmony, punctuated by complaints of Ethan, "You stepped on my foot." Damn it. I wiped my face. Now I have to blow the roof off this gala, for the sake of childhood trauma. The night of the performance, the elites of Pierce Holdings sat in their tailored suits. I was wheeled onto the stage. Charlotte, my audience of one, was lying on a gurney, a sign taped to her chest. Critically ill patient. Shock may be fatal. Good evening, everyone. I yelled into the microphone. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Pierce's heart condition for making this performance possible. The audience was silent. The moment the music started, the entire venue exploded. I used an MRI film as a symbol, slid across the stage on a CT scan like a skateboard, and finished with a classic stage dive, right into the board of directors section. What the hell is this? Charlotte's uncle, the man who had orchestrated her kidnapping, shrieked, pointing at me. This, of course, was my gift to Charlotte, her very own live-streamed family meltdown. Death metal, I explained patiently, pouring half a bottle of saline on his head. Vintage 82. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Charlotte on her gurney, laughing so hard her oxygen mask was askew. Her heart rate soared to 120. Dr. Matthews and his emergency team were frantic on the sidelines, unable to break through the wild crowd. At the concert's peak, the giant screen behind me suddenly switched to a security feed. Chloe, my parents, and my 3 brothers appeared in the hospital hallway, bowing in a 90-degree angle to my empty room. "We're sorry." Leo's shout echoed through the venue via the feed's microphone. "Ethan, you bastard, you better get well. I'm not done fighting with you yet." My father held up a childhood photo of me, his voice choked with emotion. Dad was wrong. I shouldn't have. My mother had fainted into Chloe's arms, and my dear sister was using a marker to scrawl "World's Greatest Rock Star Ethan" on my hospital room door. The venue fell silent. I stood among the scattered instruments, my face a mess of sweat and tears. "Ethan," Charlotte's weak voice came from the gurney. "Uncle?" From the lead singer. I stumbled over to her and saw she was clutching a tiny remote control. She had switched to the security feed on purpose. "You, plan number 5, she winked. Live-streamed Family Meltdown." I raised my guitar as if to smash it, but then gently laid it across her chest. "Ms. Pierce, you fight dirty. Takes one to know one," she said, pointing at the screen. "Your sister hacked my company's security system." On the screen, Chloe was flashing a peace sign at the camera, while behind her my parents and brothers were frantically moving things into my room, from teddy bears to game consoles, as if trying to rebuild my entire childhood. On the ambulance ride back to the hospital, Charlotte's heart rate was miraculously stable. She was scrolling through videos of the concert on her phone when she said, "My uncle peed his pants." We laughed like idiots in the back of the ambulance. And as we were laughing, my vision blurred. A large drop of blood landed on Charlotte's hospital gown. "Ethan," warm liquid gushed from my nose. I tried to wipe it with my sleeve, but it only made it worse. The last thing I saw was Charlotte's terrified face and the sound of wailing sirens. "The tumor ruptured. Get him to surgery now. We need a signature from the family." "He doesn't have family. I'm his. I'm his friend." In a daze, I heard Charlotte yelling, Chloe crying, Leo swearing. I tried desperately to lift my hand, to tell them not to worry, to say I still hadn't taught all the kids how to braid 4-2 bracelets. But the darkness came too quickly. At the very end, someone squeezed my hand tightly. Charlotte played death metal at my funeral. It was Ethan's last wish, she explained to the stunned guests, casually slapping an Optimus Prime sticker on my urn. He said he'd curse anyone who cried with baldness. She'd photoshopped my black and white memorial photo into a rock star poster, with a line of fluorescent text at the bottom. "Here lies a warrior who treated medicine like a joke." Chloe cried until she hiccuped, placing a screaming chicken on my altar between sobs. Leo, his eyes red, placed a carton of strawberries next to my urn. That idiot still couldn't remember I was allergic. Your turn, Charlotte nudged my dad. Say you're sorry. My father's lips trembled. He bowed 3 times to the urn and finally collapsed to his knees. Ethan, Dad was wrong. Charlotte calmly recorded the whole thing and posted it to the Sickmate Alliance group chat, a group that now had only one member. Plan number 5, perfectly executed, she typed, as if I could still see it. My funeral became a social media sensation. The hashtag most insane funeral trended for days, filled with videos Charlotte uploaded. She taught seniors at a nursing home to braid bracelets from 4 tubes. She auctioned my paintings and donated the money to a foundation for abducted children. She even threw a party in the morgue, though the only guests were the kids from the pediatric ward. Ethan would have loved it, she'd say whenever someone questioned her. She was becoming more and more like me. She'd tell bad jokes in board meetings, fold financial reports into paper airplanes, and even got a barcode tattooed on her inner wrist. If you scanned it, our picture popped up with the caption, "Congratulations! You found a pair of star-crossed lovers. Death isn't the end. Being forgotten is." And this woman was using the most absurd methods to make sure the world remembered the name Ethan Thompson. Everyone thought she had lost her mind. Until a rainy day 3 years later, Charlotte stood before my grave, holding a black umbrella, reporting on her recent victories. Leo visits every week, more punctual than he ever was for work. Chloe became a therapist, specializing in helping abducted children. The rain fell harder. Charlotte crouched down, wiping the tombstone with her sleeve. Oh, and yesterday was your parents' silver anniversary. Your mom made your favorite pot roast. Her voice caught, though she put in way too much salt. It was disgusting. Then you definitely didn't finish it, I said, holding an umbrella just behind her. Charlotte's back went rigid. Her umbrella fell to the ground, the rain instantly soaking her floral dress. I'm back, I said, tilting my umbrella to cover her, though no one knows how I survived, not even me. She turned slowly, her face a mask of disbelief, as if she were seeing a ghost. She reached out a trembling hand, then pulled it back before it touched my cheek. Is this a hallucination? Why don't you find out? I took her hand and pressed it to my neck. Feel a pulse. Her fingertips were cold, but the touch was real. We stood there in the downpour like 2 fools in front of my own grave, staring at each other's drenched, pathetic state. So, Charlotte's voice was hoarse. You're here to see if you properly completed our Sickmate Alliance Special Action Plan. I pointed to the row of screaming chickens in front of the tombstone. Your aesthetic is terrible. Charlotte suddenly laughed, and the laugh turned into a sob. The rain washed away her tears, but couldn't wash away the choked sound of her words. Welcome back. We sat on a bench in the cemetery, sharing updates like we used to in the hospital room. She told me how my entire family had changed after I died. My father had quit his job to become a full-time volunteer for an anti-abduction organization. My mother had finally learned to make a decent pot roast, and Leo was even studying to become a preschool teacher. And Chloe, the week after the funeral, she published a collection of all your paintings. Charlotte pulled up the ebook on her phone. Ethan, the Unseen Star. It had broken sales records for an art book. The rain stopped. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the stone that bore my name. Some apologies come too late, but they're still better than never. Just like the urn we fought over, it wasn't ashes that filled it in the end, but the proof of 2 lonely souls saving each other. Charlotte suddenly asked, Do you remember our deal? Which one? The one about sharing an urn? No. She pointed to the empty plot next to mine. I bought the space next to you, but now it looks like... She paused. I'll have to get a refund. Good grief. It wasn't enough for her to fight me for an urn. She had to compete with me for cemetery real estate, too. I started laughing, a loud, free sound that startled the birds in the trees. It was good to be alive. Good to be able to laugh. Good to see the sun on this infuriating woman's face. So good. Charlotte, I said softly, thank you for living for me. She shook her head. No, thank you for coming back. Neither of us asked the big why. Some miracles don't need an explanation, just as some bonds don't need a promise. Death couldn't keep us apart. Life wouldn't dare. As we were leaving the cemetery, Charlotte looked back at the tombstone. Should we have it removed? Let's leave it. I took her arm. As a reminder to certain people, I raised my voice intentionally, that if you mess with me again, my ghost will live a better life than you ever will. A frantic rustling came from the bushes nearby. Charlotte and I looked at each other and smiled, a silent agreement not to call out the familiar figures who had been hiding there all along. The sun had completely chased away the clouds. At the intersection ahead, the traffic light blinked between red and green, as if unsure whether to stop us or let us go. But that was okay. We had all the time in the world to wait. Charlotte opened a strange shop in the south part of the city. The sign was a crooked neon light that read the Star Repair Shop. On the first day, a little girl with pigtails stood at the door, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. "Ma'am, can you fix him? My mommy says he's too old." Charlotte knelt down and took a small button from her pocket, placing it on the bear's ear. "Try this magic button." The little girl pressed it, and the teddy bear suddenly began to sing Happy Birthday completely off-key, an old recording of me, which I had originally planned to hide in Charlotte's pillow as a prank. "It remembers every voice that ever loved it," Charlotte said, ruffling the girl's hair. "Like stars. They might look like they've burned out, but their light is still traveling to us." I was hiding behind the counter, eating cake, and nearly choked. When did she learn to talk like a normal human being? The next day, an elderly woman with white hair came in, holding an old-fashioned radio. "It hasn't made a sound since my husband passed." Charlotte opened the back and placed a small stone she'd picked up from my grave inside. The radio crackled to life, playing a wedding march from decades ago. "Some things aren't broken," she said softly. "They're just lonely for being missed for so long. They need to be remembered." As the tearful woman left, clutching her radio, I came up behind Charlotte and nudged her. "You put a Bluetooth speaker in there, didn't you?" She coolly showed me the playlist on her phone. "It's called A Synthesis of Technology and Mysticism." The weekend brought a rush of customers. A boy in a baseball cap wanted to fix a shattered ceramic mug, and Charlotte taught him how to trace the cracks with gold lacquer to make them look like lightning bolts. A sad-eyed girl wanted to repair her broken guitar, so she replaced the string with a silver one, telling her it would sound like shooting stars. The most absurd customer was my brother, Leo, who slunk in and said he wanted to repair a family photo I had smashed. "That's an easy one." I couldn't help but jump out from behind the curtain. I took the frame and swapped the old picture for a photo of us from the Screaming Chicken Foundation fundraiser last year. Out with the old, in with the new. Leo was so startled he fell on his butt, dropping the frame and shattering it again. As we were closing up, Charlotte hung a small blackboard on the door. On it, she wrote, "Repaired today. 3 broken hearts, 2 misconnections, 1 coward who is afraid to say I love you." I added a line in small print below it, and 1 CEO's conscience status, likely missing. The streetlights flickered on, one by one. We sat on the steps of the shop, sharing a piece of cake. "Do you remember when we were 6, Charlotte said suddenly, "and we got lost on this street?" I shook my head. The memories from before I was taken were like faded photos, only fragments remaining. "You insisted the stars in the sky were light bulbs hung up by angels," she said, pointing to a distant neon sign. "So we followed the lights, and we actually found our way home." The night wind chimed the wind chimes hanging from the eaves. In that tinkling sound, I suddenly understood what this shop was really about. "Charlotte," I poked her shoulder, "you don't actually know how to fix any of this stuff, do you?" She looked down and smiled, her eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "People don't need to be fixed. They just need to be seen, just like all those forgotten, broken, and flawed things we called imperfections. They were just lost stars, waiting for a single moment to be illuminated again by the light of love." The laughter of children echoed from down the street. A new customer was approaching, holding a broken toy. The shop window reflected our silhouettes, and for a moment, it was as if 2 6-year-old kids were standing on their toes, pasting glitter onto the sign. The star we had once used as a landmark had finally traveled across light years and landed in our hands. 2 children who thought they had never been loved had found their way home by playing their own game. And now, we had finally learned how to use each other's light to guide the way.